Sunrise. Bye.
The internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winford Williams.
At a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVMTV.
So much more than entertainment.
It's your girl Tassanchin Crooks, and you're watching CVM. See it happen.
Good evening and welcome to Lead Stories Global Lead. I'm Jodi-Ann. Tonight we examine how global power, policy choices and climate realities are colliding and what that means for small states like Jamaica. From oil exploration at home to political collapse in Haiti to how the United States' enforcement policies are rippling through global sport. This is not a headline show. It's about systems, consequences, and choices. This is Lead Story. Jamaica is at an inflection point. The government has confirmed that United Oil and Gas is now on the ground, conducting exploratory work to determine whether Jamaica has commercially exploitable oil reserves. Energy Minister Darrell Vaz has framed this as exploration, not extraction, but the debate has already begun. Our neighbors Guyana and Suriname have seen oil transform their economies, while Trinidad and Tobago offers a longer, more complicated lesson. At the same time, environmental groups here at home, including the Jamaica Environment Trust, are warning that searching for oil while being a climate-vulnerable island is a contradiction we may not survive. Let's listen to the CEO of the Jamaica Environment Trust, Dr. Teresa Rodriguez-Moody. Right. We're going to play that later on in this discussion. But as this conversation is also happening in Jamaica, it's happening against a backdrop of recovery from Hurricane Melissa and after Hurricane Beryl, reminding us that climate change is not abstract. It is expensive, disruptive, and inescapable. So tonight we ask a hard question. Is oil a development opportunity or a risk we cannot afford? We are going to listen now to Teresa Rodriguez-Moody before we are joined by economist Joseph Cox. First, let's listen to the CEO of the Jamaica Environment Trust, Dr. Teresa Rodriguez-Moody.
Well, if nothing changes, then we need to consider a future that where we have more events like Hurricane Melissa and more impacts on our economy and development challenges. Jamaica is one of the most vulnerable countries we're the section of the hemisphere that is the most vulnerable to climate change, to the climate crisis, and therefore turning around and investing in the same thing that has caused the climate crisis is a bit of a contradiction. And so we really need to be looking in a totally opposite direction.
Well, now to look at some of the benefits and some of the concerns that are being raised, we're joined by economist Joseph Cox. Thanks for joining us, Joseph.
Hi, Jodi-Ann. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks so much for being with us. Jamaica is now at the exploration phase of looking for oil, seeing if we have commercially viable prospects. We're not yet, though, at the extraction phase. Can you clearly explain for the viewers what that distinction means in financial terms and any other terms that you want? What does it actually mean to be digging for commercially exploitable oil?
I don't think, to be frank with you, with what I have read, and I'm not an engineer, let me say it clear, but what I have read thus far, what they're doing is basically what I call some preparatory work, just to establish whether or not it's even feasible to start any kind of real exploratory work. And please understand something, as we saw in Guyana, and I suspect it has happened somewhat in Suriname thus far, is that, remember, even when they start the drilling, it doesn't necessarily mean that they'll find anything. I mean, I do take into consideration the fact that, yes, persons will raise issues about potential for damage, because obviously our tourism product is significant in Jamaica, and therefore we have to be mindful of, in the event that you do find commercial viable quantities of oil, what happens there? How do you guard against the eventualities, frankly speaking, where you're going to have oil spills, etc. But that does not mean, this is not a binary choice. We can walk on chew gum. And the fact of life is that if you have the potential for this sort of development, because we don't even know, first of all, we don't know if we have commercially viable quantities. And even if we do not yet know what the quantities that are likely to be there, because that also has a lot of implications. Because if you do have, all right, Jodi-Ann, let's carry to the extreme. If you have commercially viable quantity and sizable, then you have other considerations now, because, for example, you will also be changing what I would call the tone and character of the country, because an emerging oil economy, it comes with certain types of expenses, it changes the character of your country somewhat, etc., etc. No, our wages, even though wages have gone up quite a bit over the last couple of years, the truth of it is that in an oil economy, you will find that the cost of living usually outstrips considerably the wages, and therefore it's almost like you're on a knife edge where you have to try and balance out what your wage bill is like in preparation for, without going to an extreme, obviously. But then you don't want to get yourself like what has happened in Guyana, whereby Guyana, the wages have been so low over so long. What they have been forced to do is they have to give out the conditional cash grants periodically. So even the budget that was already in Guyana, today's what? Yes,
the 26th, the 27th, right. Yes, so yesterday, 26th.
Yesterday, they have had to allocate $100,000 for each Guyanese over the age of 18 for next year.
But Joseph Cox,
this budget year.
That is a part of the success story that has been sold. Guyana and Suriname are indicated as success stories. What structural advantages did they have that Jamaica perhaps does not? So let's talk about things like geography, scale, reserves, or even timing.
We don't know, Jodi-Ann. That's the point. We do not know at this point in time what this scale is. I mean, we could end up with, I don't know, we could end up with 10 million, the equivalent of 10 million barrels of oil, or we could end up with 3 billion. We just don't know. So it will be difficult at this stage to tell you that, because, all right, if you carry to the extreme, let me tell you what my own thinking would be. If you carry to the extreme, so that you don't end up completely I suppose the phrase would be upsetting your economy. What I would say is to use the example of a Norway, where what they do is that for the money that they have earned off the oil, only 3% is actually used within the economy.
And that is something the sovereign wealth fund that they've created there in Norway. An example that has been taken by Suriname, where they have also, instead of doing the cash grants that we have seen in Guyana, have taken the sovereign wealth fund route, saying that current and future generations should benefit from the oil exploration. Is there then is it too early to have a conversation, given that United Gas and Oil?
It is necessary, but I think as at this stage, it's still too early for us to be having that kind of consideration. What we should be focusing on...
Hold on, Joseph. The consideration you're saying it's too early to have is how we would distribute the money that we do not have, that we're hypothetically talking about?
Yes.
All right.
But the point is simply is that what we need to, what the conversation I think we need to be having, at least preliminarily, would be the nature of, in the event of, the nature of the extractive contracts. Because frankly speaking, right across this region, whether it be bauxite, oil, you name it, we have been notoriously bad at negotiations of those things. And so that we don't fall into the trap of other countries, it would seem to me that now would be the time to at least start to, or at least after they do the exploratory, the research work as they characterize it, then you start to look at that sort of eventuality as to what sort of, just a bare bones in it, but ensure that you get good advice, really sensible advice, and that you guard against some of the, how should I say, some of the more exploitative aspects of that have been known to attend to some of those contracts.
Well, if we're going to make sure that we're putting everything in place, Jamaicans are watching, they're looking, they're hearing about cash grabs there that are happening in Guyana. They're seeing how Trinidad and Tobago benefited greatly from finding oil, and they're seeing what's happening in Suriname. Help us be realistic. Help us be realistic then, Joseph. Even if oil is found, how long would it realistically take? And I'm giving you hypotheticals. I know you don't love them. Before we start seeing any benefits for Jamaicans, and what are the policy and public risks of expectations going far ahead of what can now be done?
This is a good point. Good point. The first answer to your question, I would say easy 5 years before you see anything real, because they have to do if you get to the stage where you start to do exploratory drilling, there are a whole lot of work, that preparatory work that has to be done, etc., etc. So that I would say easy 5 years. No, the risk that we have to run, or we would be running, to be honest with you, is if we get ahead of ourselves and decide that, oh yes, the oil is coming and we are going to start to spend in preparation of that coming. Because that would actually undermine, frankly speaking, most, if not all, of the economic gains that this country has reaped over the past number of years. So that is part of the risk that you have to avoid, that we don't count our chickens. And that's why you notice I'm being so cautious in what I'm saying, because we do not know yet if we have commercially viable quantities of oil. If frankly speaking, we don't know if it really is there, right? So we have to be careful that the expectation is not built that yes, we have it. So because listen, I remember, in Guyana when that started, the first thing the then party in power did was declare that people are going to get free cooking gas and all sorts of benefits that they were starting to announce.
And again, recognizing that there's a political dimension as well as an economic dimension is going to be something that small Caribbean economies like ourselves have to work our way through. It's certainly then something that we're going to be having years of conversations, because economist Joseph Cox has said that we're years out from, even if we find this oil, and some are crossing their fingers that we do, some are crossing their fingers that we don't, that we will be able to see anything exploitable. Economist Joseph Cox, thanks so much for helping us think through the real trade-offs here. Not just the promise, but the risk. All right, that's Joseph Cox talking to us. From energy choices to governance collapse. Just as Jamaica is debating long-term strategy, Haiti, our neighbor, is struggling with basic political function. We talk about that next inside Lead Story.
Set, go. Question: what matters the most to perform your best on a Sigma race day?
Speed.
No, what really matters is what's in here, your heart.
Sagicor Sigma Run. Register now at sagicorsigmarun.com.
The internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winfred Williams.
At a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVMTV.
So much more than entertainment.
Jamaica's unemployment rate has fallen to 3.3%, down from 13.2% in 2016. Our government's continued focus on job creation is delivering real results. We are building Jamaica. The time by the Office of the Prime Minister is...
Welcome to Jamrock. Jamaica, Jamaica. Oh, my reggae nice and it make ya.
It is such a joy to be here this evening with you at the 2025 Hummingbird Gala.
The American Friends of Jamaica presents its Hummingbird Gala, honoring Joseph Joe Bogdanovich and Jason Hensel.
We're celebrating business leaders, we are celebrating public servants, philanthropists.
Don't miss it this Thursday at 8 p.m. on CVMTV.
Haiti's Transitional Presidential Council, created to steer the country towards stability and elections, is now fracturing. A majority of the council has moved to dismiss the interim president, even as the council itself is set to expire on February 7th. The United States, through Secretary of State Marco Rubio, has said such a move would be illegal, raising questions about legitimacy, sovereignty, and who actually holds power in Haiti right now. And all of this is unfolding against a backdrop of continued insecurity, fragile institutions, and pressure to hold elections despite conditions that many say make that nearly impossible. To help us understand what's really happening, we're joined by journalist Jacqueline Charles, who's been covering Haiti for years and is a correspondent there at the Miami Herald. Jacqueline Charles, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Let's first give a brief overview for viewers trying to follow this closely, because we're going to play a couple clips, but if they have no clue what's been going on, what exactly happened inside Haiti's Transitional Presidential Council over the past few days?
Haiti's political crisis deepened Friday when a member of the country's Transitional Council announced that a majority of the panel had voted to fire the country's embattled prime minister. We ourselves are the majority. The majority is not 2, 3, 4, or 5 people. The majority is the entire population. In his speech at the police academy, the Prime Minister did not address the temporary Presidential Council's decision to fire him.
That was a clip there from African News that helps us better follow along what it is that Jacqueline Charles is now going to tell us. Jacqueline Charles, help us understand what exactly happened.
Well, first of all, that wasn't a prime minister. That was actually the head of the Presidential Council.
Yes, the Presidential Council saying that they were firing the prime minister.
But he is not among the 5. So let me take you from the beginning. First of all, for your viewers, everyone should remember that it was in Kingston, Jamaica, in March of 2024, where then Secretary of State Anthony Blinken arrived along with other heads of states from the region, as well as foreign diplomats. Basically, the Haitians could not go there because the gangs were trying to take over Port-au-Prince. Ariel Henry had been shut out of the country. He was the prime minister at the time. And a deal was essentially created to create this 9-headed presidential council where you have 7 members with voting rights and you have 2 who are observers. Fast forward today, this council is set to leave office on the 7th of February. When they sign on to this agreement, they were supposed to be handing power over to an elected president with an elected parliament and elected local officials. Well, none of that has happened. Haiti is now preparing for its 3rd transition since the 2021 assassination of Jovenel Moïse. 5 of the 7 voting members decided last week that the Prime Minister, Alex Didier-Fils-Aimé, should go. And the clip you just saw was at the police academy where Laurent St-Cyr, who is the current coordinator, he is not signing on to that. He has basically sent instructions not to send that resolution to the national press, where if it's printed, you could say it has some sort of legal force. But as you mentioned in your opening, Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said this is illegal. We are in a situation right now where Haiti is out of the Constitution. Everything has been ad hoc, improvisation. And the question is, who has the legal authority to govern this country that hasn't had an election in 10 years? The council members themselves, they were named to this council by various sectors and political parties in Haitian society, but since they were named, many of these groups have backed away. And in fact, Famille Lavalas, which is the party founded by former President Jean-Bertrand Aristide, sent out a very critical note on about its member to the council, Leslie Voltaire, who is one of the leading individuals who has been pushing to replace the prime minister. He said on Friday, we are the ones who named Didier-Fils-Aimé to this job. We have the right to remove him, and it's our responsibility on the way out the door to ensure that this country doesn't slip in chaos. But even that has been, controversial in terms of, whether or not these guys have the credibility to do what they think they have.
The big question that you have left unanswered, though, is who currently holds authority in Haiti and on what legal basis would they be holding authority? Because you've talked about different factions, different sets of people. What's going on? Who is in charge?
So that has been the case. I mean, currently what you have is a, presidential council. They serve as the executive, as the presidency. And you have a prime minister, Fils-Aimé, who is in charge of the day-to-day operations, and he has a cabinet. The question then is, what happens on February 8th? Who is in charge of this country on February 8th? Will it be Didier-Fils-Aimé by himself? Will it be another president? Will it be somebody from the Supreme Court? This is what CARICOM has been engaged in for the last couple of months, trying to get different sectors of Haitian society, civic leaders, political leaders to come together and to decide what this country should look like in terms of governance on the 8th of February. But we don't know if that's going to happen, because what you saw, some people are calling an attempted coup attempt by the council, whose mandate is finishing in just a few days. But they, have been accused of trying to hold on to power, extend their reign. They have been campaigning even when they say they're not. Some of them would like to stay on in the 3rd phase of this transition. And what you're hearing from the Trump administration, no way.
Well, CARICOM first, given that you made mention of them and the kind of work that they're doing, has sent out a statement earlier today indicating that the Caribbean community notes with great concern the internal turmoil, they said, taking place at the highest levels of the Haitian state at what they call a delicate point, when in a time when stability and level-headedness in decision-making and prioritization of the well-being of the Haitian people are urgently required by members of the Haitian executive. So big words there, not a lot of movement. But it ends by saying CARICOM calls on all Haitian stakeholders to put the future of their people and country above all else and to act responsibly with urgency and patriotism. Sounds all well and and good, but you're talking about the people who are on that council campaigning to stay on in the third phase. They were selected, some argued, to move them out of that campaign mode, that you didn't have multiple people then canvassing for that job and you had energies directed in one direction. Now that you're seeing this on February 8th, are we expecting there to be multiple candidates coming out and saying, I should be the one in charge?
Well, you already have that. That's happening right now. But also, let's remember the context in which all of this is taking place. And this is what CARICOM is warning about. You have a country where gangs control up to 90% of the capital. Thousands of women are being raped, violently so, sometimes in packs. You have 1 in 4 individuals just in Haiti's capital who live in a gang-controlled neighborhood. Over 8,000 people were killed last year, more than 1.4 million who have been internally displaced. More than 5 million people are going hungry. It's one of the world's top 5 hotspots. And over 6 million people, that's more than half of the population, are in need of humanitarian assistance. So what they're trying to avoid is you have a political vacuum, which we saw in 2021 with the assassination of Jovenel Moïse in July. The gangs step into that vacuum, and who suffers? It's the population. So what they're saying to Haiti's political leaders is, hey, get your head on, let's figure this out. But on February 8th, there needs to be some semblance of stability, that this is a country that is headed toward elections, which they have planned for the summer. No one is really thinking that that is possible, despite some recent gains by the police forces and the GSF, Gang Suppression Force, which Jamaica has some members deployed into. We're still waiting for that real contingent to come in, supposed to be at least 5,000 before the end of the year. But it's a very unstable and volatile situation. And now when you add the politics, the state versus the state, that's how they're describing this. If they're not calling it a coup, they're saying it's the state versus the state, two heads of the executive that are going at each other for power and who knows what else. But right now, it's, we're on the verge of chaos.
Let's listen to a report now about the U.S.'s response, because Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said you're not going to be having that on the ground, given that the United States has said that this is now illegal. Let's take a listen first before I ask Jacqueline Charles about that.
Meanwhile, Secretary of State Marco Rubio called Haiti's prime minister today, offering support after Haiti's temporary presidential council voted to oust him. In a statement, a spokesperson for the State Department said Rubio talked to Haitian Prime Minister Alex Fils-Aimé to reaffirm U.S. support for Haiti's stability and security. The secretary added the transitional presidential council must be dissolved by February 7th. Went on to say the U.S. will ensure there is a, quote, steep cost for corrupt politicians who support vicious gangs who wreak terrorism on Haiti. This comes just days after the council voted to fire the prime minister, although he has not left office. The State Department's official Twitter account called the move illegal. Meantime, TPS for hundreds of thousands of Haitians due to expire on Tuesday, February 3rd.
That's temporary protected status in the United States, something that allows for the instability in Haiti to have persons safely move to the United States and get some sort of, I'll say, status as they are in that country. But the U.S. is deeply in that. When we're looking at this going on in Haiti, a sovereign state, how significant is the U.S. in influencing what's considered illegal or illegitimate inside Haiti's current political moment?
Well, let me just say, TPS, which will end on Tuesday, February 3rd, it affects over 350,000 Haitians who have been allowed to live and work in the United States legally on a temporary basis. They have managed to send billions of dollars home to Haiti, which has kept that country afloat. And if President Trump doesn't change his mind, if there is a court ruling to this effect, they will now be, target for deportations and dispatched to a country where, as I said, up to 90% of the capital is controlled by gangs, and all of the roads in and out of the capital are under gang control. So, when you talk about the United States and what its role, and I have to say that the comments by the U.S. State Department, and they have been very clear and very harsh. I mean, they've called members of the council corrupt politicians. They've accused them of being aligned with gangs. And on Sunday, they actually revoked the visas of 2 additional members. One was already had his visa. So now 3 of the 9 council members no longer have U.S. visas. And so, again, remember that meeting I talked about in Kingston, Jamaica in March of 2024? Who came to that meeting? It was Anthony Blinken. I mean, they sat down, with members of the international community, and they and they had the Haitians on Zoom. And, the Haitians knew at 9 o'clock, and I knew at 12 what this council was going to look like and how this governing structure was there. So, the U.S. is heavily involved. But, this was an ad hoc. These individuals did not come into power because they were voted into power. They came in because CARICOM insisted that Ariel Henry had to be removed from power, the United States forced his resignation, and then you had, this whole craziness on the ground where gangs united. They try to take down the government, and after months of having the Haitians being unable to figure out what next, how this country should be governed, the U.S. led this effort with the Caribbean community and says, okay, here's what we're going to do. So if they put you in charge, can they not fire you?
Well, that's going to be the big thing now as we watch what happens not only on February 7, but February 3rd, end of TPS inside the United States. And now what happens for the next few days as the council and the interim president now have this face-off as the United States and the rest of CARICOM watches. Journalist and Caribbean correspondent for the Miami Herald and explainer of what is going on the ground there in Haiti, Jacqueline Charles. Thanks so much very much for joining us inside Lead Story. All right, that context is critical and sobering. Now from the Caribbean, we turn to the United States and how domestic policy is shaping global perception.
Make we do the right thing. Make we live good today for a better tomorrow. Talk it out. Don't fight it out. The time by the Ministry of National Security is
6:30.
Everybody want to see if a country right now.
One thing about Jamaica, we might have differences, but we know when something is good for all of us. And when we work together against crime and violence, we are stronger than ever. And that's how we know the Citizen Security Plan can work.
That one that name CSP.
The Citizen Security Plan is an initiative of the Ministry of National Security in partnership with the European Union. It's an all-of-government effort to create safer streets and build stronger communities. Go to mns.gov.jm to learn how you can play your part.
If you're a woman in business, it's time to go bigger.
Your ambition is calling, and Horizon for Women in Business is answering.
Horizon, a new loan product from Access Financial Services designed for women entrepreneurs to unlock the capital you need to grow and take your business beyond limits. With quick approval, flexible repayment, and low interest rates, your success is on the horizon.
Call us now. The funds are waiting.
Your success is on the horizon.
Let's delve deep into the issues. We'll take you beneath the surface.
Greetings and salutations. My name is Orville Higgins, and it's another edition of Fan Central.
Talking to the people at the heart of the top sporting stories. Hear from your favorite sportsmen and women and the administrators who work tirelessly to make it all happen. It's live sports talk.
I've written an entire article.
Yeah. Looking at all the major issues every Tuesday at 9 p.m. It's Fan Central.
The United States is preparing to co-host the FIFA Men's World Cup with Canada and Mexico, one of the largest sporting events on the planet. But questions are being raised about whether global sport and hardline enforcement policies can coexist. Former FIFA president Sepp Blatter has publicly warned fans to avoid the United States, a remark that would have been unthinkable a decade ago. This comes amid controversy surrounding U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, and pushback from Europe, including Milan, ahead of the Winter Olympics. But this is about more than just sport. It's about how power projects itself and how quickly reputation can shift. Joining us now is sports journalist and morning news producer at WABI TV5, Damian Gordon. Hi, Damian, and welcome to Lead Story.
Hi, thank you very much for having me. Good night to you. Good night to the viewers.
Everybody is watching now. Former FIFA president Sepp Blatter has warned fans to avoid the United States. Let's first listen to this clip as I ask you why a sports figure would make such a stark political security statement. Let's take a listen.
As immigration tensions escalate, the former president of FIFA is supporting a boycott of the upcoming 2026 World Cup. Atlanta's Mercedes-Benz Stadium is set to host multiple matches there this summer. In a post today on X, Sepp Blatter quoted in an interview as saying, "For the fans, there is only one piece of advice: stay away from the USA." Blatter was served as FIFA's president from 1998 to 2015. He resigned amid an investigation into corruption.
We have to be in context here. Sepp Blatter is not the most loved man. He is not necessarily the most hands-clean man, but he is making a big political statement at this time. How surprising was it to you to hear him come out and say this?
Well, if you understand the historical context and, there's no love lost between FIFA and the United States when Sepp Blatter was a president, because he was hunted down for a long time by authorities in the United States, and he resisted all that temptation for them to try and have him over corruption charges. But, so I'm not surprised to hear that coming from Sepp Blatter. For me, I think it's really a bitter grape situation here, and one in the context of righteous indignation, because when he was a FIFA president, we've seen, teams try to boycott tournaments. That didn't come off, and that's now the case here with the United States. Understandably, there's a hostile environment towards immigrants right now in the country, and what with the United States trying to put pressure on Denmark to try and acquire Greenland. But I think all of this is much to do about nothing. The teams will not boycott the World Cup. What we saw in 2018, if you remember, when Russia hosted the World Cup, we had all this big cry as well about nations wanting to boycott the World Cup because of human rights violation and holding up a symbol for democracy, because Russia doesn't stand on those pillars. But yet still they went. What we saw was a diplomatic boycott of the World Cup. So the royal family didn't go, and some of the government officials decided they would stay away from the tournament. But that's just about it. And I don't think that's really going to send a strong message. We saw in Qatar last year, or rather in 2022, because of the human rights violation there as well. You had countries saying that they were going to boycott mainly because of LGBT rights issues, and none of that happened. So this, for me, I think is much to do about nothing, and all these teams will come to the United States, and for those who can't, they will stay away in terms of the fans.
Those are the kinds of discussions, though, that are happening in advance of the World Cup, the Summer Olympics in the United States, and even the Winter Olympics in Milan now being impacted by these conversations, because the U.S. is co-hosting this Men's World Cup with Mexico and Canada. How sensitive are mega sporting events to perceptions of what's going on inside? Because unlike Russia and Qatar, the examples that you gave, the perception was that those citizens weren't enjoying the best of rights, but those who were immigrating to see the spectacle would not be harmed. Now immigrants and enforcement and public safety are being now raised as live issues for those hoping to go to the United States, especially as that country has also made now declarations about countries that they think are unsuitable and now have restricted visas from those countries. Does that change then the nature of the kind of concerns, not just what happens to your own citizens, but what happens to those who are coming to watch the games?
Well, I really don't think that the political atmosphere in the country is in any way hostile to fans who may be traveling here. I think that the stupid ones here, as stupid as they are, maybe that will just take a back seat for the moment when the World Cup comes to town, if the fans are here. I think the feeling is one that, some of the folks who may not look like you and I might feel threatened when immigrants come here and they see them thriving in some ways, and they feel like their problems are as a result of those people who don't look like them. And I think for the fans who are traveling, I really don't think as crazy as these people are, that they would try to bring any harm to these fans. And I don't think that there's any reason for fans who are coming to watch the game who should feel any way that their lives would be in danger, or that they couldn't come here and enjoy the World Cup. So the unfortunate thing is that, a lot of teams that are playing to get to the World Cup, some who are already here, are on, no travel list from the United States. And so the fans who want to come here, there has been a suspension of visa from those countries, especially Haiti, the Caribbean nation. So they've also had their visa status suspended. So fans there are struggling now to decide how do I go and watch a game. And I think FIFA is trying to intervene to try and make sure at least there's an exemption for these people. And of course, for those on the African continent, a lot of, I think maybe about 18 to 19 countries on the continent, there's a ban on those countries as well, in terms of no-fly or suspension of visas for those who want to come here. So those are things that FIFA, and Gian Infantino, in all fairness, he seems to suckle to the President of the United States as best as he can, and every time he opens his mouth, he's almost bowing down to the President in a clownish way. So I think these two may have something in common, and they might be able to work something out for the good of the fans to come and see the World Cup.
It's going to need to be to the good of the fans. Infantino a few weeks ago giving President Donald Trump a newly created trophy as a result of him not winning the Nobel Peace Prize, giving him a peace prize that had been created, as you said, to calm the president and to calm the concerns of individuals that would be coming to the Men's World Cup, especially to those matches in the United States. But this conversation is also against a backdrop of FIFA and pricing concerns about the World Cup, and also two other competitions, the Winter Olympics in now Milan, Italy, where the mayor of Milan said that Immigration and Customs Enforcement that has been deeply problematic inside the United States, having heard now that they're going to go to Milan to provide security, he's saying they don't want them there. And then now concerns as well about the Summer Olympics in Los Angeles. Because we're having this conversation so early, are there concerns that things could escalate so that come June, when we're watching that first match in Mexico, we could be looking at an entirely different reality?
Absolutely. I mean, the political wind is always going to make sure that it has some kind of impact on sporting events. And to the credit of the fans, some who have some moral clarity about them would want to see things being done better here in the United States, especially to the immigrant population. And what is happening here certainly, it's hard to watch. I had a friend of mine had a recent run-ins with some folks who think that, people like, him or us should not be here. And they articulate that very, very loudly these days in the political climate that we're in. And also, it would be nice to see the political directorate of the country trying to take that edge off, but we're not getting that. And I think, with people from the outside, I'm happy that they're not sitting idly by, even though I think it's a level of tokenism and almost moral projection that's going on, because they're not really actively doing anything to try and tell the fans, don't go, or look, we're not going to issue visas, we don't want you to travel there. But I think it's one of the big deterrent for fans. I think it's the real cost of travel and ticketing to come to these tournaments, because it's really exorbitant. And I think, when you look at all that's happening now, whether it be the Olympic Games in 2028 or whatever, you could say, look, I'm not going to spend my money with these people because they don't want me here. They don't like people like me. So why go there? And maybe some fans may take that as their cue to say, look, why part pumping with all this cash to go to a place that I'm seemingly not welcome?
All right. Couldn't have you leave before asking you the important question. Jamaica is not yet in the World Cup. We've taken the harder route to get there. What do you think our chances are?
I think we beat New Caledonia. I very doubt it very much that we beat the Congo in the final, because I guess we'll beat New Caledonia. I expect us to get past New Caledonia, but we've failed spectacularly so far in terms of letting down the fans along the way. This was a very easy draw, but I can't see us beating the Congo to get to the tournament. And so I think we'll be watching this one.
I think people underestimate how desperately New Caledonia wants to go. So I put some resistance that with New Caledonia as well for the Jamaican team, but we're going to watch this situation. Not only the politics on the ground, but the sport as we now continue to watch the lead up to Men's World Cup 2026. Sports journalist and morning news producer at WABI TV5, Jodi-Ann Gordon. You spend time with us. Thank you so much for doing so.
You're welcome.
All right, this is a reminder that policy never stays in its lane. Look how excitement and politics now gets in the middle of sports. Some might argue it always did. But we're going to take a break and come to you next. Top 3 stories as we take you through our global current.
Stir fry and then do the walk, the donate walk, then you run, then you run, and then you run, and then you wheel and come in, then you donate to educate, donate to rebuild the school, donate whether small, whether big, anything at all you can donate, come out of your pocket, come out of your wallet. We need all of the donations now. Ding dong, ravers, Sagicor, register now.
Hi, I'm Landy. Welcome to NLA Connect, the National Land Agency's customer engagement platform. NLA Connect is a simple, user-friendly platform designed to help you share your feedback, get support, and updates about land-related matters. Available 24/7, NLA Connect allows you to share suggestions, comments, and commendations, submit queries and report issues, attach files with your requests, track requests and get real-time status updates, connect with NLA client engagement officers, and provide feedback on the service received by the platform. We're making it easier for you to connect with us. You can access NLA Connect via our website, using the kiosk at any of our offices, or scanning the QR code displayed at our locations. Need any help along the way? Check out our FAQs section. It has all the answers you need in one location. NLA Connect, your voice, our priority.
Now let's turn to our top global stories and what they mean to you here in Jamaica, why they matter beyond their borders and why they matter to you. Let's start off with our first. The United States has formally completed its withdrawal from the World Health Organization. President Donald Trump has revived a move first attempted during his previous term, this time allowing the one-year withdrawal process to run its course. The United States is also signaling that it will not pay approximately $200 million in outstanding contributions. Let's take a listen to this report.
Nowhere is Donald Trump's so-called America First foreign policy more evident than in his administration pulling out of the World Health Organization. The United Nations has seen this movie before. In 2020, during his first term, he also initiated the process of withdrawing from the WHO and ending all funding to the global health body. Actions later reversed by Joe Biden. Now he's doing it again.
Withdrawing from the World Health Organization?
Ooh, that's a big one. President Trump's justification for pulling out of the WHO comes down to this: fairness and China. Historically, the U.S. has been one of the largest funders of the WHO, ranging from $160 million to $800 million annually over the last decade, roughly 15% of the organization's budget. China has 4 times the population of the U.S., but historically has contributed less than 1% to the WHO, far below the U.S.
They were paying $39 million, we were paying $500 million. It seemed a little unfair to me.
China has since announced it would dramatically increase its contributions to the WHO, but Trump has also held the belief that the WHO helped China cover up the origins of the COVID-19 virus, claims that have never been substantiated. This week, the UN said the WHO remains as vital as ever to global health.
We believe that the World Health Organization is one of the crucial agencies in the UN system. It is a vital part of our efforts to coordinate a range of international responses to some of the most pressing problems we face.
No doubt global health programs around the world are being and will be further impacted by the drawdown of U.S. funding. But knowing that this might happen, other member states of the WHO last year approved a 20% increase in annual dues, which will help offset some of the shortfall money that will no longer be coming from Washington.
Now, that money might not be going to coming from Washington, but there are serious questions that are being raised as well about global health and governance and what happens across the world. We were able to deal with things like a pandemic by working together, and so the U.S. now in the process of its withdrawal, it still has money that it has not yet paid, money that's necessary for them to complete the process, but that's certainly something we're going to be watching and seeing. All right, our next story takes us to Mozambique, because after weeks of heavy rain, they have left entire communities underwater. Hundreds of thousands have been displaced, with some estimates suggesting it could take weeks, even months, before floodwaters recede enough for cleanup to begin. Let's take a listen.
When this river burst its banks, devastation followed. That is a toll gate submerged in water after several weeks of very heavy rain. The signs show that there is a road under here, a major highway that connected this community to the rest of Mozambique. Schools, offices, homes, fuel stations and businesses, the damage stretches for kilometers, showing just how catastrophic the floods have been. This country experiences repeated weather-related disasters that scientists link to climate change. Heavy rainfall has also affected Mozambique's Gaza province and parts of neighboring South Africa.
You need to know what's happening here. All the river from South Africa, all the river from Gaza, they are draining the water for this side, because this is a river, Inkomati River, the water going to the sea, and we are receiving all the water from the north to south, and we are suffering.
Government officials say the flooding is the worst since the year 2000, when around 700 people were killed. You see those power lines over there, and you can see how high the waters come. These floods have been devastating for communities in remote areas, and for many people the only way to get out is waiting for these rescue boats. But the boats can only carry a few people at a time. That means numerous trips up and down this river. Silora Marcus says she's never experienced floods like this before.
When it started raining, we did not think it was bad. Then we saw the water rising, and very quickly it became too much.
The search and rescue operations are mostly community-led.
We do have a lot of people whose houses are underwater. They have been moved to higher ground, and we're still moving them. The problem we're going to face very shortly is to feed those people and to protect them from the elements.
Feeding people, protecting them from the elements. That's a big concern when you have displacement. And this is being linked directly to climate change. It's therefore a warning for all vulnerable states. Displacement is no longer temporary. For many, it is permanent. And given our own examples here with Hurricane Melissa leading to massive floods in sections of Jamaica and persons still being displaced, we want to keep our eyes on this and wish for the best for Mozambique. Now, our third story. Across the United States and Canada, a massive winter storm has disrupted travel and daily life. We had that discussion here yesterday inside Lead Story, talking to Jamaicans who are living in Canada and the United States. But flight cancellations have now reached their highest level since the COVID-19 pandemic, stranding travelers and impacting supply chains. Let's first take a listen to how bad the storm is, and then take a look at what has been happening inside the airports.
This morning, nearly 270 million Americans across the central and eastern U.S. under alert as dangerous winter weather grips much of the country. Parts of Massachusetts buried in 2 feet of snow. Parts of New England seeing snowfall rates up to 2 inches per hour. In Norwood, Mass., a woman dying and her husband seriously injured after they were hit by a snowplow in this parking lot.
My biggest message is please take it seriously. Stay off the roads and check in on your neighbors.
In New York City, the mayor saying at least 6 people died because of the storm as frigid temperatures gripped the tri-state. Up and down the East Coast, sleet and rain creating chaotic driving conditions. Vehicles littered on this highway in Missouri. In the South, more than 1 million without power as thick ice puts pressure on power lines.
There's trees down everywhere and power lines as well.
In Nashville, ice overwhelming the branches on these trees, sending them crashing into the road. Extreme cold causing plumbing problems at this hotel in Oklahoma, part of the ceiling collapsing.
And this is the biggest snowstorm that Philly has seen in the last decade. The most snow so far in the last 4 years for places like New York City and other areas. And even though the snowstorm shut down Boston for the second day now, it is not over yet. Another 2 to 4 inches is expected to fall today. And there's a winter storm warning in place until this evening, George.
Janae Norman, thanks.
At airports across the country this morning, airlines are trying to bounce back from Sunday, which saw the most flight cancellations in a single day since the beginning of the COVID pandemic. More than 6,000 flights canceled, 7,500 delays on Monday alone, after a stunning 11,000 cancellations Sunday, as a lack of airport staff hinders the recovery.
A lot of our airport workers are having trouble getting in as well, so we're navigating that, and we're hoping by midweek we're going to be back to normal.
Travelers nationwide feeling the frustration.
The next flight available is Wednesday at 7 p.m.
So that is the situation in the United States and across the world, because those flights that have been impacted impact not just the U.S., but connecting travelers going along as they make their way across the world. Now, for the Caribbean diaspora, this is not just a weather story. It's also an economic and human one. We have friends and family who are inside the United States, and they too are going to be dealing with this massive storm. In the United States, in Canada, and in parts of the world that are stuck in airports as they try to get to their destination. Now, tonight's stories may seem different. Oil in Jamaica, talking about Haiti, sport, global health, extreme weather, all of that is that what we went through today. But they're all connected. They're all about how states use power, how systems fail, and how small countries like Jamaica must make decisions in a world that is less stable and less forgiving. Now, before we go tonight, our big discussion tonight inside Lead Story Prime, how much does it really cost to die in Jamaica? Are families being protected by insurance or trapped by fine print? And when the state takes custody of a body, who actually pays for dignity in death? At 8 o'clock on Lead Story Prime, we investigate the business of death, funeral costs, insurance, and exploitation.